This is my response to Susan Harrow's YouTube about how women and girls could speak up for themselves more. I'm here enjoying the Arizona sunshine. You know, as an East Coast Midwesterner, Canadian, other places I've lived, living in an environment like this is the coolest. Anyway, I really like what Susan wrote. You know, I love her interrupt patterns for how to assert your voice when men are trying to shut you down. And I kind of have a twist on it that I'll get to later on when in this response. Susan Harrow asked for responses to her video, so I'm doing that. I'm not in the age group of women that this is really directed to, but as an older woman who worked in corporate America and academia, and as an entrepreneur and consultant from a young age, I understand a lot of those shutdown strategies, and I'm so glad that we're finally addressing them. You know, so much in the past, women's wisdom sharing has been reduced to the idea of being gossip, but now we're really able to share these kinds of strategies because I've gone through these things that Susan's providing a defense for. I've gone through them and experienced them. Like when I was younger, I was in a club with male leadership, and I would come up with great ideas for how we could develop our club. And the men would either ignore me or dismiss me, even talking around me at times. And then they would use my ideas, but not give me any credit or recognition. This happened even recently. I did a groundbreaking piece of work in a group, and the male leadership completely ignored me and took all the bows, didn't even thank me. So being able to claim credit for your accomplishments, even when you're speaking in a club, is pretty important. And being able to maintain the authority of your own voice is pretty important too. So I really liked those interrupt patterns that Susan presented. There are other ideas, like one of the things that the Me Too movement brings up to all of us is how men use rape as a form of social control at times. And when I was a young woman in corporate America in Chicago, I actually had male competitors try to use sexual oppression, sexual threats, sexual abuse as a way to not only win personal victory over me, they didn't succeed, but to also psychologically devastate me so I wouldn't be as formidable a threat professionally to them. So the Me Too movement is trying to abate that, but in my opinion it's really going too far. When a woman has a 30-year-old complaint, I really think she needs to shut up. And it's not that I have no compassion, it's just that 30 years ago the way men and women treated each other was very different. And if men didn't make assertive, aggressive moves, nothing would ever have happened, because women were still caught in the Victorian idea of being demure, domesticated, and not aggressive during sexual, relationship issues with men. So to hold men to a standard that's just now being developed and ruin their careers, I think makes women seem silly and unethical, and it's really counterproductive. So the public face on the Me Too movement, it's not getting me. In terms of acquiring your voice, I think that's very important. When I taught fairy tale literature and myths back in the early 2000s, I used 2 books by psychologists. I think one of them was Harvard psychologists, and I couldn't find the names of those books. But those books were the first books I saw that really dedicated themselves to the psychological development of women and girls. And these psychologists determined that by the time girls are teenagers, by the time they're 12, they understand that they shouldn't complain, they should always try to be nice, they should underplay their talents, they should promote other people instead of themselves, and a lot of other things that really don't lead to economic success for women. So I'm very happy that Susan is encouraging women to break out of that, because this dialogue's been going on since the early 2000s. There are a lot more books about it now. Just some of the titles I saw that relate to this issue are The Perfect Girl, The Curse of the Good Girl, Meeting at the Crossroads, The Nice Girl Syndrome, The Invisible Girls. All these books, I assume, are in that pattern. I think The Perfect Girl might have been one of the books that I taught with when I taught fairy tales. And I taught fairy tales as a really feminine form of literature. You can take my course on it if I offer one, because I think it's a very important part of women's literature. And I taught it in continuing ed, where you get a lot of mothers and women trying to make new starts, and fairy tale to me was a really good way. Anyway, I think that a lot of the time when you're trying to assert your voice, even in a family, the men in your family might ridicule you, they might call you a biatch, they might say you're silly, or there goes mom again, or something like that to discredit the authority of your voice. And I think that a lot of Susan's techniques, like the shh, and then you keep talking, that could work if people are laughing at what you say, and or using other kinds of rhetorical strategies and psychological sabotage to shut down or deauthorize your voice. The point I really am excited to bring to this is a couple of things. Mostly I think we've talked about men doing this silencing technique to women, but there are women who do this silencing technique to other women as a competitive weapon as well. When I was a graduate student at Yale, I had one professor there in the African American Studies department where I was earning my degree, and she was a foreign national from another country. So she didn't even know African American culture except from books. And in her class, I would say very compelling things, and she would say that my thoughts were simplistic. That's very simplistic. She said the word simplistic to me so often that I think other students associated simplistic with the label she was trying to give me. After she would declare my comments simplistic, another student, also a woman, in the class would wait a few rounds and rephrase exactly what I said, using a lot more academic jargon than I used. And the professor, who was trying to put me down and marginalize me in the class as an authentic American and Black American, she would say, "Oh yes, that's it. And she would really praise the other woman a great deal. I didn't have a strategy for dealing with that. It usually made me cry. Even in the classroom, I had to fight tears. The best part of it was that what I said, and I kept talking and facing that punishment, and what I said would still resonate with the other students in the class. And when things died down, they would come back to my subjects and ask me questions about my comments or build upon the things I said. So I always was able to get validation by doing something very important, and that's not shutting up when they want you to shut up. That when they insult you and try to silence you and make you feel stupid, keep talking, especially if you know you're right, because somebody's going to hear you. So I think that brings up a couple of new dimensions to Susan's work. One is that women doing it to you along with men, and the other one is the power dynamics of race. That when the power dynamics of race are added, you'll have people trying to silence you just to be racists, just to maintain the idea of European supremacy. So that's my take on it, Susan. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in your understanding of the book True Shield, of your promotion of the book True Shield, where you're teaching women and girls up to 24 how to defend themselves verbally in hostile situations. I think it's super important, and I'm so glad that you gave me a chance to communicate. I'm Silver Rain Runningcloud, part of the Runningcloud Group LLC, and thank you. Goodbye.